HULLCITY. That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty good. I pleasantly surprised after last week's half-hearted optimism towards the weekend. So it was after personally such a big weekend, and to get home and make the effort to get up and watch the game and be rewarded was really nice.
It's a strange feeling, isn't it? It takes us back to last season when we were actually winning quite a few games of football. 2 wins on the bounce is pretty fantastic. And yeah, like you said, last week I think we were pretty happy just to get a goal and settle for a 1-1 draw. So to walk away with the 3 points was very much unexpected and very gladly received as well. And I guess gladly received a pretty dubious opening goal, I suspect. What was your view on that? Did you think it was? I mean, I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, look, it was clearly out because the bottom of the ball, there was grass between the bottom of the ball and the line." But I'm sort of the opinion that unless we've got that bird's eye view right above the ball, I don't think it's as far out as some people think it was.
Yeah, look, I sort of tend to agree with you. I've seen and heard a couple of comments that it was clearly out and that there's no way that it wasn't out. But again, with that perspective, we only get one angle, or there might have been a second one, but neither is really conclusive in deciding whether or not that's out. It was close. I think it was so close that I wouldn't have argued either way. If they'd have called it out, I wouldn't have complained. I'm glad that they've called it in play, but you add into that equation, you got a box full of players. Your touchy's on the far side, like he's 40 meters away. Trying to through like with the post and everything in the way as well. Like there's a lot going on for them to make that call, and on something is ostensibly that close. You're talking inches, maybe. At such a great distance would be in like a snapshot of time. It would be hard to accurately make that call 100% of the time. And I think apart from that one you could call a contentious call. I thought the rest of the game was reffed pretty well. So I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt, I think.
Yeah, and I'd like to think, I'd like to think if the decision went the other way and it was Birmingham benefiting from that, I'd be sitting here saying the same thing, that it could well have been out, but it's impossible to say. I mean, knowing that perhaps I would have been a bit more outraged if it went the other way, but I think that's just football. I think the one thing that does count against that lino is there was a decision in, I think it was Blackpool-Luton the other week, or it was Blackpool against someone, where the ball was over the line for a goal, and then a player who was offside then followed through and kind of smashed it in the back of the net, and they flagged him for offside, basically saying the ball hadn't crossed the line when he touched it, and it was the same linesman. So I think there's probably a bit of prejudgment on him because he's had a few incidents now, but as you say, there's a lot going on in that moment. It's pretty hard to make a decision objectively one way or the other. And I don't even know if it was the Premier League with VAR, I don't even know what VAR would do, because it would probably look at it and for something that's meant to be used for clear and obvious errors, I don't know if you could say that that's a clear and obvious error. Like we've just said, without getting that bird's eye view, it's pretty hard to be definitive.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
I sort of missed that because there was someone came into the room and I got distracted. VAR, yeah, I like in terms of whether VAR would have made much difference.
I don't even know if VAR would overrule that.
I don't think so, because
I've never seen something like that.
They've got the goal line technology, but it could be applied to all, like, to the other lines in theory. But
I'm trying to think. I think it was United against someone last season. It might have been West Ham, where I'm sort of going on a tangent here. Sorry, but where I think it was Pogba or someone smashed the ball upfield, where it was almost certainly out, and VAR didn't overrule it for pretty much the same logic of, yes, it is probably almost certainly out, but we can't definitively say, and so it's not a clear and obvious error. So anyway, bit of an interesting one. But back to the game itself. lineup wise, a few surprises. We were sort of excited and optimistic about Emmanuel getting his chance at right wing or right back. And then unfortunately had that news that he was taken to hospital, discharged. So it sounds positive in that sense, but also apparently means he's not available for selection. So a bit of concern there for him. And Elder also pulling out on the day of the game with an illness. And I have heard that there's a bit of a superbug going around in the UK, not necessarily COVID related, but just a sort of super cold or something, super virus. I think Rafinha in the Premier League had the same for Leeds. So he's not like an automatic inclusion back in the game tomorrow morning against Cardiff either. And once again, it sort of saw us naturally shift to a 3-5-2 because we just had no other option. So we saw Baxter starting goal again, and we saw Longman drafted in at left wing back, which was might have been right wing back with KLP at left wing back, or vice versa. But yeah, look, I think the formation really suited us. We say it again, but the formation seemed to really suit us, and we looked really dangerous from the start of the first minute.
Yeah, look, it was a bit surprising. Those couple of withdrawals, I suppose, were a bit surprising. I mean, I think it came out that typical Elder, said, not feeling too great, but I'll push on. And McCann went, no, just have a rest. We'll need you more later. So, but no, I thought Longman on the left wing back and KLP on the right, because Longman obviously drove in into the left edge of that box for that attempt, for that assist. I again, yeah, you're right that 3-5-2 seemed to really suit us. We seem to have just like a more balance. We seem to be reasonably comfortable in defense, but transitioning well and creating lots of opportunities in attack. So I thought it was positive in that. Honeyman, another big performance. He's probably our best goals per game player this season now. What's it, two in, is it 3 or 4 or something?
3 or 4. Yeah, I think so.
So performing well. Obviously, has reclaimed that attacking midfield position as his own. KLP, dangerous again. Had a decent strike late that was saved. A lovely little chip cross for Wilkes to score. So that was that they were really good. I don't know. Apart from scoring the goal, I don't know if Wilkes did a lot. Magennis, again, apart from getting Gary Gardner sent off, I don't know what he did.
He's normally the one perpetrating the headbutt or the offense.
Yeah, there wasn't, and look, that's maybe the only other thing that was a bit rough. That in terms of officiating, I guess like to the letter of the law, it's a headbutt, but
it's one of those ones where I think headbutts are sort of automatic reds, and it can be a really mild headbutt or it can be a really severe headbutt, and it's the same result. And that was on the mild end.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. Magennis went and shirt fronted him, and then it was a dumb decision on his part, but Magennis has fronted him, then made a meal of it. Sold it to the ref that he's got him in the nose, and so. But I guess that worked for our benefit. I made it a little bit easier to navigate that second half. But yeah, I think
it showed like it was another game where I feel like when we're dominant in a game, you look at someone like KLP and he's just unplayable. It's the same as the last fixture where we were getting so much space towards the end of that game that when you're bringing the ball out and giving it to KLP to run at the defense, as he did for that Wilkes goal, he's just tremendous, and he's really stepped up. It's what he was showing last season in League One, and he's certainly showing it again now in the Championship.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, there's one comment we were talking about last week with the conversion of like chances and shots to shots on target, and we were quite poor. We were only at about 20% or something, but we stepped up. I think we went about 6 from 19 or something like that on the weekend. So, up by another 10%. 30% is better than 20. Another 2 goals, creating more chances, creating more shots on target. Obviously, I think that was what is boosted by that. Having the man advantage, it becomes one less man who's pressuring you when you're attacking. But I think overall, like, I was just really pleased that we built on the win before the break. We've backed it up, managed to get 2 wins in a row for the first time this season. Got out of the bottom 3 in a good position heading into this game against Cardiff to leapfrog them. I think we're
we'll go above them.
Is it just points different, or are we actually going to go a point ahead of them? I can't remember. I think it was real tight, but we could put ourselves in a really good position anyway to continue, that climb out of that position, out of that bottom 3 and away from those relegation spots. So
we'd be level on points with them, but we'd be a substantially better goal difference than them.
Yeah. So I think it's just one of those things where, like, a month ago it was all doom and gloom, and we were destined for relegation, and we couldn't. There's nothing we could do to get a win, and McCann wouldn't change anything, and it's just only been a few games, and it's almost a completely different picture, which is what we've come to expect in life in the Championship over the last few seasons in this division.
Well, and as I said to you, I think it was last week, or it might have been the previous week with Brad, it does become a bit of an interesting conversation now. If/when new owners come in, if we were to beat Cardiff or beat Millwall or beat both, that's suddenly a pretty healthy winning run we're on. And it becomes quite a different conversation about what to do with McCann. I mean, even just from an ownership perspective, the fans are probably not going to change their mind. The fans have probably made their minds up on his future at the club. But just from a results point of view, it becomes very difficult to sack somebody that's winning so many games. So it does become a bit of an interesting conversation. You did talk about there Wilkes, I think, not doing too much besides his goal. I think he was definitely probably the biggest disappointment for me in the game. It felt like there was a few times where we had really great counterattacks or great opportunities to cut the ball back into the box and score a goal. And every time the ball found him, it was just caught up under his feet. He slowed down moves, lost possession, looked very, very leggy out there for most of the game. I'm a bit concerned his fitness levels just don't seem to be up to it at this point, whether it's, I know he was injured on the opening day. I think was he injured over preseason as well? I don't think he played much of the preseason. So I don't know if his fitness base is just starting from a lower point than some of the other players, but it's an interesting conversation to be had, because I think with Bernard suspended for this game with his 5th yellow card, whether we switch back to a 4-3-3 out of necessity and whether Longman just gets in instead of Wilkes up forward instead.
Yeah, look, that conversation about what the lineup's going to look like tomorrow is going to be interesting, because depending, I guess, on availability of Elder and Emmanuel, we are still quite short in the back line as a whole, even, because that then if they're unavailable, that becomes Elder, Emmanuel, Bernard, Jones, Coyle,
Fleming as
obviously,
well. I mean, if you want to call it, and Coyle, yeah. So no fullbacks.
Pretty much everybody, pretty much the whole, all of the backs apart from McLaughlin and Greaves are going to be out. So
you'd almost be looking at whether you do a 3-5-2, but playing, I don't know, like a Smallwood or someone at centre back. Just because a 3-5-2, then at least you're using your KLP and maybe your Longman as wing backs rather than as traditional fullbacks.
Or that, or the other alternative is, we just throw a young fella in the deep end and see how he goes.
See if there's another 23.
Surely there's someone who's making some waves, or putting in some good performances in the under 23s. So, I mean, that's an option. If we were going down that road, if we had Elder back and then 2 decent centers, I wouldn't mind doing that, maybe just as having one, a young guy at right back or something. But I even though I suggested it, I'd be probably hesitant in a back 3 to run that, because I think if we did it, it's the same thing. We're still it's a very young back 3, but we have been doing that anyway. So
I wonder if we did, even if we do have Elder back fit, whether we, like you're saying, whether we potentially just play him as a centre back and then have your KLP and your Longman as your wing backs. And then in a way you could then have Elder sort of overlapping with Longman down the left or something like that. But it'd be a very experimental formation from a side that for a lot of this season has been pretty conventional.
Yeah, look, the thought of Elder coming into a left-sided centre back crossed my mind as well. He does like to get forward, and that's what concerns me of him in a back three. But I'm sure if he was called upon to do the job, he'd probably rein it in a little bit, pick his moments. But
I wonder how far off Huddleston is, because I haven't heard too much about him.
well, yeah, that he shouldn't be. Because I was going to say the end of the month, but we're almost at the end of the month. So
yeah, well, exactly. I thought if he was an outside chance, he could probably get thrown in at centre back instead.
Yeah, which wouldn't be bad. He'd be able to direct play. Hopefully, not have to do too much, up and back. Hard work on the soft tissue, but.
Well, looking at it, I mean, the last news on him was Grant McCann was waiting on the green light to play him against Birmingham. So obviously wasn't right for the Birmingham game, but shows that he's reasonably close.
Close. There you go.
So could be in that position. We've sort of jumped ahead there to talk about the Cardiff game, but just finishing up on Birmingham. I mean, the only other thing I really wanted to talk about was the sort of the Birmingham fans getting pretty wound up and throwing bottles at Baxter, which can kind of baffles me for a couple of reasons. First of all, how are they getting bottles of beer to their seats in the stand and the stewards are doing nothing? I mean, I hear constantly about the stewards giving City supporters a tough time for standing up or doing whatever, not being able to sit in particular sections of the stands. And yet the away fans just seem to be able to get away with almost literal murder. Being able to throw bottles of beer at footballers just doesn't seem like something you should be able to do. Aside from that, the fact that Baxter had a pretty decent reaction to it, took a swig from one of the bottles. Hopefully doesn't get any sort of awful diseases from it, but it's just a bizarre situation, and it's a pretty low sort of set of behaviors.
Yeah, look, it's the sort of thing you never really want to see. I get like they're frustrated with the game, or that they felt that Baxter was slowing the game down or whatever, but it's not the way to go about it. I think what was nice was McGree
and one of their forwards, I think.
Yeah, another one of their players came to tell them to settle down and help clear the mess off the pitch. So that was a nice touch from those players. But I mean, I don't really know what to say. I'm in no position to really condemn them in any great meaningful way. But I mean, it's disappointing. Disappointing to see, and I would hope that there's some sanction, if they can identify those who were responsible for it, that some sanction is placed upon them. Yeah, whether it's I don't know whether it's necessarily worth. I think McCann said that he's gonna fine them and they're gonna get a lifetime ban or something. I don't know whether it's necessarily worth that much, considering like it was only a couple of weeks ago that there was an incident with a flare.
Just gonna say that, yeah,
within our own supporters group. So.
Yeah, I think lifetime bans get thrown around, like the notion of a lifetime ban gets thrown around a little lightly. I think for acts of racism, things like that, absolutely fair enough. For sort of heat of the moment, sort of silly actions like that, if it's a season ban or something like that, maybe I can understand that, but I don't think a lifetime ban's really in order.
Yeah.
I did find it a bit frustrating that the Birmingham account or the Birmingham social media team or whoever you want to say is behind it, we're quite happy to go on about the ball being potentially slightly out for our first goal, but didn't, as far as I've seen, I don't think they've said anything to condone the behaviour of the supporters, which is a little bit disappointing. You'd hope that they'd come out and make a comment, but I guess that's just the way things go. Okay, well, just before we move on, then we'll get the 3-2-1 votes for this week. I'll let you go first this time.
All right. I made sure to watch the highlights and make my decision before I came on here, so that I wasn't influenced in any way. We've ended up fairly similar, or like we have two of the same, but I have gone for a very different prospect for my 3 points. We were talking about him last week. Proposed that he get a start and see what he can do from the beginning of a match. And Longman came in, and I thought he was very impressive, involved in a lot, created a few really nice chances, and I think he took that opportunity with both hands. So I've given 3 points to Longman. I have given 2 points to our favourite little midfield maestro, George Honeyman, for, I mean, again, being in that position to sweep the ball in for our first, put us on our way again, and just involved in everything again. Another who is helping to create lots of really good chances for us in the final third. And 1 point I tossed up between 2 or 3 players. I almost gave it. My first thought was I'll give a point to Wilkes because he scored the goal, but then I thought, what else did he do? And I almost gave a point. I almost gave it to Baxter because I thought another, that's 2 games, 2 clean sheets. Didn't put a foot wrong. But there was a couple of good saves, but I don't think overall he had that much to do. And so I have decided that I will give the 1 point to one of the favourite sons of Hull City. I've given it to KLP for just what you were talking about earlier, his endeavour and being unplayable at times in and around the box, and for setting up the second goal, obviously.
I actually thought then you were going to say a different favourite son who as you were talking there, I've actually realised I was going to give a vote to and I'd completely forgotten about. So I've gone Honeyman for the 3. I think he created a lot, as you said, and he's just getting back to his best and is again just running the game from the midfield, got the opening goal and had an all-round fantastic display. 2 votes I gave to KLP, as you said. I think it's so exciting. It brings you back to the days of Jared Bowen when we're springing a ball on the counter attack and the ball gets sprayed out wide to KLP in acres of space and he just tears up the pitch, and it's just so exciting to see what he's going to do with it. So he's really developing over these last few weeks, and you can see like the confidence in the side as we're getting the wins on the board and scoring some goals. It's just naturally lifting the side as well, which is great to see. And then I've given the 1 vote to. Actually, I'm going to give it to Greaves over Baxter, who I was originally going to give it to Baxter for winding up the Birmingham supporters for that great save in the first half as well. But I think you're right. I mean, he didn't have a whole lot to do in the game, and I had actually thought whilst watching the game that Greaves was putting in a fantastic display. He was cleaning up everything at the back. His distribution with the ball was fantastic as well, and is just having a real purple patch of form these last couple of weeks. So. It's great to see him settle. I think there was a few question marks on him a few weeks ago about a bit of a dip in form, bit of confidence lacking potentially, but same as KLP, I think with the way that we're playing at the moment, 2 clean sheets in a row, confidence is high in the side, and he's certainly playing very well. And you think, like we're talking just before about the defensive issues that we have with all the injuries and all the rotation, and he's almost the only constant in that back line, and he's just, at that age, just being able to sort of lead the side essentially from that defense has just been fantastic. I mean, even the goalkeeper behind him's changing. So I think he's probably the only player who's played every minute of the season just about. So yeah, terrific display from him again. Okay, well, we'll move on then. And we do have our little quiz for the week, our little triple flashback quiz. This one's potentially a little bit tricky because it does stretch back a little way. And so I'll see how you're going with your, I don't know if I'd call them obscure players, but perhaps players that wouldn't immediately spring to mind.
I think I'm 2 out of 3. I think the third one is the one that's going to escape me, the one that you're referencing.
Yeah. So the question is, can you name the last 3 Hull City goal scorers from South America?
So I went, obviously, I'm hoping he's still in the last 3. I would imagine he would be. He scored about 40 goals for us. Abel Hernandez as one of those 3. I was struggling to think of what South American players we had. But I suspect that the Brazilian Evandro is one of those scorers. He didn't score many, but he got at least a couple. And I've no idea on the third. I could barely even think of any other South American players we had signed.
So you're right with Evandro, who scored his last goal was against Villa in 18-19. I think it might have been that game in January where we went up 2-0 and then all of a sudden looking like we're going to make the playoffs, and then it all just kind of collapsed from that point on. Hernandez, of course, is one of them as well in the 17-18 season. The third is a player who played for us in the Premier League on loan, if that helps at all, in the last Steve Bruce Premier League season. I can give you the club he was on loan for, but I don't know if that will help at all. He was on loan from Southampton.
Oh.
Signed on deadline day alongside Ben Arfa, Diami, and Hernandez. So 2 South Americans signed on the same day.
No, I'm fully blanking. Just
Gaston Ramirez.
oh my Ramirez! I've completely forgotten that he was ever a player.
Yeah, I was looking at this because I fully expected that it was likely to be Giovanni. I thought it was going to stretch all the way back to Giovanni when I was looking this up as a little quiz question, and I'd also completely forgotten. I think he scored the 1 goal for us against Sunderland. He was one of those players that season where I think we just sort of threw a bunch of darts at the board to see what would stick, and he kind of came in. He looked good in flashes in that season, and then just didn't achieve a whole lot. I don't actually know where he went after that. I think he might have gone back to Southampton for a season and then just faded away. But yeah, bit of a blast from the past. Both Ramirez and Hernandez as Uruguayans, and then Evanjo as the Brazilian, and then of course Giovanni a little bit further back as the Brazilian, but not in the last 3. Okay. Well, we will look ahead now to that Cardiff game tomorrow morning. We've already sort of touched on what we think the lineup should be. I actually didn't realize that we haven't beaten them since 2016. We've lost 3 of the last 4 against them. I did see that City put up the little flashback to our Premier League meeting with them where we beat them 4-0, which perhaps appropriately was against Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as their manager in the week that he's been sacked for conceding 4 goals to Watford as well. It was kind of funny timing with that one, but they've won their last 2 games, same as us. They've appointed Steve Morrison as their new manager after Mick McCarthy left. So they're sort of experiencing a bit of a bounce in form as well. I saw the interesting stat. They haven't scored a goal in the first half in any games this season. And of course, having said that, I'm sure they'll score in the first 5 minutes against us now. But so yeah, it's a bit of an interesting season they're having. I think I remember pre-season, there was a bit of optimism that they could be an outside chance at the playoffs, and they've really sort of not achieved that in the slightest. So yeah, I guess, 2 wins on the bounce for us. It's certainly a game that we'd be looking at that it's very gettable to make it 3 out of 3.
Yeah, I think I'd be hoping that within the next week, I'd be saying 4 points is an achievable target. Whether that is the 3 points tomorrow or a draw tomorrow and then 3 against Millwall later on, no idea. But I sort of tend to agree with you. We're two on the trot. We seem to be playing, quite positively, quite confidently, or more confidently now anyway. Again, a game that's really achievable, that has big ramifications. My concern about securing the victory is on the personnel, is our own issues that we're going to face with. I think if we had the full 11, or like our first 11, or even the 11 that started on the weekend,
yeah,
I'd have no doubt in backing us to get the 3 points. Depending on what that 11 looks like, it makes me a little hesitant, or a little more cautious in my estimation of our results. So I think I'm going to just. I think I'm confident in probably the point. I think a draw, I'd be pretty happy with to take that. It obviously doesn't get us into that position where we leapfrog them on the ladder, but it keeps us, within touching distance of them. Hopefully, then we get Bernard back for the Millwall game. We have hopefully some other personnel. Then lots starting to return, and we can continue picking up the 3 points, building on what has been a slow start, but steadily improving. So
yeah, I think that's right. I think if we can at least pick up a draw and kind of keep the points ticking over, and and sort of keep that gap to them at just 3 points.
Just excuse me for just a minute.
That's all right. If we keep the points ticking over and we can pick up another point against Cardiff tomorrow morning, it means that we can kind of keep that touching distance. I think Peterborough have a reasonably tough game. If I have a look at that, they are playing Blackburn. So I'd expect if Peterborough aren't able to get the win over Blackburn, if we're able to pick up a point against Cardiff as well, it kind of keeps those points ticking over quite well. And like you said, I think the personnel issues that we're having, Bernard out for this game, the doubts around both Emmanuel and Elder in the fullback positions. If we're able to come away with a point in this one, I think I'd be reasonably happy. But then at the same time, you think, the attacking form that we're showing, there's no reason that we shouldn't go out there and try and get a couple of goals.
Yeah, I think we certainly will go out and attack them. I just think without our best, well, not even 11, but our best defensive players there, we might leave ourselves a bit vulnerable on the counter.
Yeah.
That's my concern. But look, I think I'm going to be disappointed because I'm not going to get to watch. I'm going to have to go to work. I'm going to miss half of it, but I'm looking forward to at least the first half and listening.
It will be
to
nice having it at a reasonable time, I must say. The 7 a.m. kickoff.
Listening to the second half on the way to work, but should be a really good game. I think two sides, even though the wrong end of the table, as you say, both coming into a bit of form, both needing this result. There's a lot riding on it, so I think it'll be a really good outing tomorrow morning.
And then we've just got the Millwall game this weekend. 1 win in 7 against them as well. So 2 sides that we haven't had much luck against recently. They've only won 2 of their last 5 though, and they're a bit of a draw merchant from all the evidence. I think they've got the most draws in the division. Tough game, but look, another one where I would think if we were to win the game against Cardiff, I'd think 3 wins on the trot. We're looking at a pretty confident side taking on Millwall. No reason we wouldn't be able to continue it against them as well.
Yeah, I think that Millwall will be, again, as I sort of alluded to before, pretty achievable target. I think the way we have played the last couple of games, and then you add in, we're going to get Bernard back, potentially some others, as we've sort of alluded to, with a lot of players that are they're very close to their returns. So potentially, some of those issues of depth and the injury list, disappear essentially, and we have a full squad to choose from. And I think overall, now that everyone seems to have settled to the championship, we're starting to figure out, which of the players that are performing. I think we put ourselves in a lot of good positions. And I think, we've been talking about how, like, even though we haven't been getting results, like, our defense is still quite impressive overall. Yes, without getting lots of wins, but we have quite a solid defense, ranked towards the top of the division, or not like the top, but like
just about in the playoff places, I think.
Is it? Oh, okay, so it's
just in terms
I guess
of
with another clean sheet. So yeah, since we were last talking, it's probably improved a little bit again, but it's quite good, I think, now, and the attack is starting to get up to speed, and we're starting to score goals on a more regular basis. So I think I'm actually looking forward to this run into Christmas, and potentially with this takeover happening soon, and then January, potentially 1 or 2 signings could make things very interesting coming into the second half of the season. I think we're probably still too far away to even like contemplate something as ridiculous as a playoff push or anything, but I think we're building towards something where we can actually push ourselves into a place where we should be able to secure safety before the final day.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's sort of getting towards that mid-table position where we can sort of relax is probably the wrong word, but stop being as focused on a relegation fight and dare to look up the table in any sense, just to mean that, as you say, we'll be able to secure safety before the final day. It's pretty mad to think if we do beat Cardiff tomorrow morning, in our last 3 games, we'll have doubled our points total for the season. So it would certainly be an achievement and really show a bit of a turn in form for the side. But then, as you say, I mean, I think 4 points over the next 2 games is certainly a targetable return and really sets us up quite well to kick on with. Yeah, I think that's just about it. So thank you for joining me for this episode, Dan.
Not a problem.
No worries. And
pretty much always available.
Yeah, it's always good to chat. And I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow morning. Nice, comfortable kickoff time for us. Is a nice change from the 2 a.m. Wake ups for those games. But looking forward to that one. And we'll be back this time next week to discuss those 2 games. But until then, come on, City.